Right now, the world is holding its breath because two men are once again shaping the direction of global power, global money, global technology, and possibly the future of peace itself. On one side stands Donald Trump, unpredictable, confrontational, and determined to put America first at any cost. On the other side stands Xi Jinping, strategic, patient, and focused on building China into the dominant force of the 21st century. This is no longer just politics. This is a battle of influence, a battle of economies, a battle of ideology, and behind closed doors, a battle for the future world order. Every speech they give moves markets. Every decision they make affects jobs, wars, technology, and international alliances. From Taiwan to trade wars, from artificial intelligence to military power, the tension between these two leaders is forcing every nation to choose a side. And the scary part, most people don't realize how deeply this conflict could impact their own lives. Because when America and China collide, the entire world feels the shockwave. So, the real question is not whether the world is watching Trump and Xi Jinping again. The real question is, what happens if neither of them backs down? The world is no longer watching a simple political rivalry. It is watching two powerful men test dominance on a global stage. When people look at Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, they are not just seeing presidents. They are seeing two completely different versions of masculine leadership collide. One leads with force, emotion, unpredictability, and public confrontation. The other leads with silence, patience, calculation, and controlled power. And psychologically, men everywhere are drawn to this conflict because deep down, every man understands the pressure to dominate, protect, and prove his value in a competitive world. Men are raised to believe weakness gets ignored, hesitation gets punished, and power earns respect. That is why millions of men around the world emotionally connect to leaders who project certainty, even when the world feels unstable. Fear is what silently fuels every Cold War long before weapons ever do. Behind every aggressive speech, every economic sanction, and every military warning is the ancient human fear of losing control. Women often observe this differently than men do. Many women look at these global power struggles and see danger, instability, and emotional immaturity disguised as strength. But many men see something else entirely: survival. They see two leaders refusing to appear weak because men understand that in the real world, perception often becomes reality. The moment a man looks uncertain, people challenge him. Nations work the same way. And that is why this tension between America and China feels personal to so many people. Because it reflects the same psychological battles happening inside homes, relationships, workplaces, and society itself. Silence is often the clearest sign that people are preparing for conflict. Around the world, nations are publicly talking about peace, while privately choosing who they trust, who they fear, and who they may eventually follow. Some are leaning toward Donald Trump and America's aggressive economic and military influence. Others are aligning themselves closer to Xi Jinping and China's long-term strategy of control through trade, technology, and infrastructure. Because when two powerful men compete for dominance, neutrality becomes dangerous. And psychologically, men understand this instinct better than anyone. Men are conditioned to study power dynamics early in life, in friendships, in business, in relationships, and even in silence. A man learns quickly that standing alone during conflict can make him vulnerable, which is why alliances become a form of protection. Pressure changes human behavior faster than ideology ever can. Many women look at global alliances and wonder why leaders cannot simply cooperate for stability and peace. But many men recognize something deeper happening beneath the surface. They understand that competition is often driven by the fear of becoming irrelevant. No powerful man wants to wake up one day and realize another man controls the future. Countries behave the same way. Every government is calculating survival, influence, and security because power is never just about strength. It is about perception. And the moment one nation appears weaker, uncertain, or dependent, the balance begins to shift in ways the world cannot easily reverse. Powerful men rarely obsess over weak opponents. The real reason Donald Trump cannot ignore Xi Jinping is because China represents something far more dangerous than competition. It represents replacement. For decades, America stood at the center of global influence, global money, and global authority. But now, for the first time in generations, another nation is openly building the confidence, technology, and economic strength to challenge that position. And psychologically, men understand exactly why that creates tension. Men are deeply wired to protect status because status often determines survival, respect, and influence. The moment a man feels someone else rising fast enough to threaten his position, his instincts shift from comfort to defense. Nations behave the same way when power begins to change hands. Competition becomes emotional the moment identity gets involved. Many women observe political conflict and wonder why leaders constantly escalate instead of cooperate. But many men recognize the hidden fear underneath these confrontations. They know that for powerful men, losing influence feels almost identical to losing control of their future. That is why trade wars, technology bans, and military pressure have become personal battles disguised as policy. China is no longer just another country in America's eyes. It is the mirror reflecting what America could eventually lose. And when men believe their legacy, authority, or dominance is being challenged, they rarely respond with patience because pride often speaks louder than logic under pressure. The most dangerous power is often the one that moves quietly while everyone else is distracted by noise. Xi Jinping understands something many world leaders do not. Real dominance is not built through emotion. It is built through patience. While other nations focus on elections, headlines, and short-term victories, China has been thinking in decades, expanding trade routes, controlling supply chains, investing in technology, building influence in weaker economies before they even realize dependency has begun. And psychologically, many men recognize this strategy because men are taught early that the strongest person in the room is not always the loudest one. Sometimes the most powerful man is the one who speaks less, watches carefully, and waits for the perfect moment to move. That kind of controlled ambition creates both respect and fear because it signals discipline without emotional distraction. Patience becomes intimidating when people realize it is connected to purpose. Many women tend to see long-term leadership through the lens of stability, structure, and calculated planning. But many men see something more primal underneath it, strategic dominance. They understand that men who think long-term are often preparing for control, not simply success. That is why China's rise feels different from past global competitors. It does not look rushed. It looks intentional. And when a man appears completely focused on a mission larger than himself, people begin to wonder how far he is willing to go before anyone can stop him. The world is no longer controlled by whoever has the most land. It is controlled by whoever controls money, intelligence, and fear. That is why the rivalry between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping feels bigger than politics. This is about who will dominate the systems that shape everyday human life. Money controls economies. Artificial intelligence controls information. Military power controls consequences. And together, these three forces are rewriting the definition of power itself. Psychologically, men understand why this matters, because men are deeply conditioned to measure security through control. A man who loses financial control feels vulnerable. A man who loses intellectual relevance feels replaceable. A man who loses the ability to defend himself feels exposed. Nations experience the same fears only on a global scale. Technology has become the new battlefield because influence no longer requires soldiers standing at borders. AI can shape opinions, manipulate information, predict behavior, and quietly influence millions of minds without firing a single bullet. Many women look at this rapid rise of technology and worry about human connection, emotional health, and the loss of empathy in society. But many men instinctively focus on competition because they recognize that whoever masters intelligence first often controls the future. That is why governments are racing to dominate artificial intelligence with the same urgency nations once used to build nuclear weapons. Behind every innovation is a deeper fear of falling behind another powerful rival. Fear changes how powerful men make decisions when they believe history is shifting beneath them. Military strength is no longer just about warships and missiles. It is about sending psychological signals. Every military exercise, every economic sanction, and every technological breakthrough is designed to communicate dominance without directly speaking the words. Men understand this instinctively because status has always been connected to protection, power, and respect. And when powerful men feel their position being threatened, they do not simply compete harder. They start preparing for a future where trust no longer exists. The most dangerous conflicts in history did not begin with weapons. They began with pride. When two superpowers refuse to back down, the world enters a psychological battle long before it enters a physical one. Right now, the tension between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping represents something deeper than politics or economics. It represents two powerful systems trying to prove they deserve to lead the future. And psychologically, men understand how dangerous that becomes once ego and identity are attached to power. Men are often raised to believe that backing down means losing respect. That admitting weakness invites challenge, that survival belongs to the one who stays dominant under pressure. Nations operate under the same emotional instincts, especially when global influence and national pride are involved. Fear becomes explosive when neither side wants to appear vulnerable first. Many women look at global power struggles and wonder why compromise feels so difficult for world leaders. But many men recognize the hidden emotional reality underneath these confrontations. They know that men in positions of power are constantly fighting an invisible battle against humiliation, irrelevance, and loss of control. Once powerful men feel cornered, rational thinking can slowly become secondary to proving strength. That is why economic sanctions become more aggressive, military exercises become more frequent, and political language becomes more hostile over time. Every action becomes a signal designed to say, we will not submit. Pressure changes societies the same way it changes individuals. Ordinary people begin living with uncertainty they cannot fully explain. Markets become unstable. Trust between nations weakens. Fear spreads faster through media, technology, and public emotion. Men often respond to uncertainty by becoming more defensive, emotionally closed, and obsessed with control, because instability threatens their sense of purpose and security. Women often respond by focusing on emotional safety, relationships, and protecting stability inside families and communities. These differences create tension inside society itself because global conflict eventually reaches into everyday human psychology. Power becomes unpredictable when leaders start believing history is watching them. Neither side wants to be remembered as the one that surrendered influence, especially when billions of people are observing every move. And when powerful men begin thinking about legacy instead of cooperation, the conflict stops being about who will be remembered as stronger